Reggie here, and I want to welcome you to another one of my videos. In this video, we are going to take a look at a couple of books that you may want to consider investing in if you already own them. This video is not about going out and buying these comics versus looking within your own collection, evaluating these comics, making a decision as to whether you want to spend a few extra dollars on those books to have them be graded to realize a bump in value by going from a raw book to a graded book. Again, this is not about going out and buying them versus investing a few dollars back into your collection. With that said, let's get to the books. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at a couple of examples of books that you may want to invest in if you already own them. And the very first book is this one right here. This is Batman issue number 400, an anniversary issue featuring a fantastic cover from Bill Sienkiewicz. That is part of what makes this book cool. The other thing that makes it cool is the long list of other legendary creators that contributed to this comic. And we're going to be looking at the values here from comicspriceguide.com. What's great about this site is not only do they provide overview information of the book itself, which we just looked at, but they also have values for both raw and graded comics. And you can see that here on screen. In the middle column, we have the raw books, and on the right-hand side, we have the graded values. And with this book, and technically with all of the comics in this video, we are using an all-in cost of $70. That is acquisition cost for the book, which again, you already probably own this book, but it also factors in the cost for cleaning, pressing, grading, and shipping the book to and from. So it's an all-in cost of about $70. Depending upon the services that you use or the grading company you use, you can adjust those numbers, but that's where I like to land on in terms of an all-in cost of around $70. From there, if we look in this right-hand column, we can figure out where we might want to draw the line for this book. And I personally would draw the line at the 9.8. That is where I would feel comfortable with this particular book. And I say that because when you look at the 9.6, the Near Mint Plus, it has a value of $86. And if we are assuming an all-in cost of around $70, that doesn't give you a whole lot of cushion for the waxing and waning of value, which is something that always happens with comics. I like to have a little more cushion built into there. So I know if I'm going to spend $70, that I'm going to have some cushion built into it where I'm not going to end up in negative territory. And for this book, I personally would draw the line at the 9.8, which has a value according to comicspriceguide.com of $200. So even if that value fluctuates, I still have cushion because again, I'm investing into the collection. I'm not just spending money for the purpose of spending money. If you happen to have this book in a different grade, 9.6 or below, put that book in a poly bag or a Mylar, treasure it, read it, enjoy it, but that might not be a book that you want to invest in by having it be graded. All right, so I wanted to throw that out there. That's the first book. We're going to look at another book here that is probably not as popular. This is not necessarily a popular title, but it is a very different title, maybe from some things that we've looked at in the past. This is Spicy Tales issue number 11, and you can see how fitting that name is from that cover that is shown on screen. This is a cover from Bruce Timm. I believe this book was published back in 1989. This is not necessarily a book that is widely available. When you look at the census count for CGC, you can actually see that there are only about 15 copies of this book out there. So the question becomes, do you have it? That's part one. Part two is, where might you draw the line for this book if you happen to have it? Where are you going to draw the line? I would draw the line right here where it's highlighted at the 8.5. And I'm saying that for several different reasons. There are only 15 copies of this book on the CGC census, only a handful of sales as a result of there being only a handful of these books graded. And when you go across the 8.5 very fine plus, you can see that the graded value of this book is sitting at around $200. Again, if you have something below that, there isn't enough sales data that gives me comfort to say, yes, you should absolutely send that book in. But when you look at the census and you look at the sales data, I have some comfort in the 8.5 or higher. And again, if you have a copy that's as high as a 9.8, that book has a value of $920. You can see 9.6 at 880. There's a huge fall off here as you get to the 9.2, from the 9.4 to the 9.2. But again, if you have this book, take a look at it, do a dirty grade of the book, and decide whether it hits that 8.5 or higher. And if so, that might be a book that you want to invest in. No doubt about it, based upon the data that I am seeing. All right, so let's take a look at another book, maybe one that's a little more popular. This is a book that I think a lot of folks have been talking about as of late. I don't know whether they're still moving forward with this movie or not. My guess is that everything in Hollywood has been placed on hold. But Gargoyles issue number 1, the original Gargoyles comic. This is a cool book. A lot of people are huge fans of the Gargoyles. I think they recently released a facsimile copy or cover of this book. The question with this one is, where would you draw the line? Again, assuming an all-in cost of $70, where would you draw the line? For me, I would draw the line at the 9.6. And again, you have a little bit of some meat on the bone at the 9.4 when you're talking about $110. But again, a lot of fluctuation. Movie may or may not happen, which has an impact. I feel like the 9.6 or above is probably going to be the sweet spot for this book. At a 9.8, it is almost a no-brainer at $280. Doesn't get much better than that, but the 9.6 is where I would choose to draw the line for this one. I have looked for this book in the 100K collection several times. I have been unable to find it, but I remain hopeful that it's suddenly going to materialize. As another reminder I'll give you, if you do not have a membership to CGC, there is a link down in the description of this video for you to go ahead and sign up to give a couple of bucks back to the channel. So I wanted to make mention of that. So the very last book that we're going to look at is this one right here, Marvel Superheroes Secret Wars issue number 1. This is the book that kicked off the incredibly popular Maxi series. I think this book set all kinds of records, or the series set all kinds of records. Just a great series, great cover, no doubt about that. With this book, I personally would draw the line at the 9.6. There is a lot of fluctuation that is happening with the value of this book at lower grades. I would draw the line at the 9.8. It's almost a no-brainer to send it in at the 9.8. But when you start to look at a little bit lower, the 9.6 at about $130, there's some variability there with the value of this book over time, kind of waxing and waning. Are they going to do a movie? Are they not going to do a movie? Is it going to be a TV show? Is it not going to be a TV show? A lot of uncertainty there, which impacts the value of this book. The 9.8 is the safe bet. If you have this book in a lower grade, 9.6, 9.4, whatever it happens to be, polybag, mylar, not a terrible way to go. Not in any way, shape, or form. But as far as what I would personally do, if it's not a really high grade, 9.8 worthy, I personally would not invest extra dollars in this book right now. I would simply keep it raw and treasure it for what it is. All right. With that said, we're going to wrap up this installment. I hope you enjoyed this one. We looked at some slightly different books, maybe than what we've looked at in the past, but this is an ongoing series that we are going to continue to do. Huge shout out to comicspriceguide.com for sponsoring this video. If you enjoyed it, I definitely encourage you to give this video a thumbs up. Check out comicspriceguide.com. There's a link in the description of this video. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, I want to invite you to do that as well. And if you want to reach out to me, you can do that on Instagram at Regie Collects. Take care.
This thing on? Mic check. I just want to make sure y'all can hear me clearly. Yo, should you practice art or should art be your practice? I had a question, so I asked it. Not to anyone specifically, but to my inner God, you know? The one that's gonna be a master, the one that's more than a rapper, the one that's an educator, the one that seeks enlightenment. He travels with concepts, he's got the mindset expansive. He understands that his time combined with travel and concepts makes his mind convex. Sort of like when you look at a brain scan, straight off meditation, we was concaving until we had that eternal dialogue that created our dialect. Now we in distinct rooms with pure souls having them conversations. Synergy and combinations, you fly and we waiting. Indian style in the gold.